In this video, we will be solving this question which says Mary Granola loves to consume two goods, grapefruits and avocados. So on the graph, the slope of indifference curve through any point where she has more grapefruit than avocados is -2. This means that when she has more grapefruits than avocados, she is willing to give up dash grapefruit to one avocado. Now note that in this part we have to fill in the blanks based on this information. The first thing that is given to us is the slope of the indifference curve, which is equal to -2. Now what do you mean by that? The marginal rate of substitution, or the MRS, measures the slope of the indifference curve, which means here the slope of indifference curve, or the MRS, is equal to slope which is equal to -2. And now by definition your MRS measures the rate at which the consumer is willing to substitute one good for the other. One slightly confusing thing about the MRS is that it is typically a negative number, as you can see here, and we know that the monotonic preferences imply that the indifference curve must have negative slope, and since the MRS is the numerical measure of the slope of an indifference curve, it will naturally be negative. So you should not worry much about the negative number, and you can ignore it while you're dealing with MRS and just focus on the numerical value. Now question further says that this means when she has more grapefruits than avocados, she is willing to give up dash grapefruits to get one avocado. And now note that this is just the exchange rate, or the rate at which the consumer is willing to substitute one good for the another, which is nothing but your MRS. And for this particular case your MRS is 2. Thus she will be willing to give up 2 grapefruits to get 1 avocado. Now let's move on to the next part, which says on the same graph the slope of indifference curve at points where she has fewer grapefruits than avocados is -half. This means that when she has fewer grapefruits than avocados, she is willing to give up dash grapefruits to get 1 avocado. So and now again we have to fill in the blank. Here your slope has changed from -2 to -1 divided by 2, or -half, which is again equal to your MRS, which is nothing but the rate at which Mary is just willing to substitute one good for the other. Since in this case your slope, which is equal to MRS, is equal to half or -half, but in case of MRS you can ignore the negative sign. This means she would be willing to give up half grapefruit to get 1 avocado when she has fewer grapefruits than avocados. Now let's move on to the next part, which says on this graph draw the indifference curve for Mary through the bundle 10A, 10G, where A represents the avocados and G represents the grapefruits, and draw another indifference curve through 20A, 20G. So let's first draw the indifference curve for the bundle 10A, 10G. We have this graph where on the x-axis you have avocados and on the y-axis you have grapefruits. The question further asks us to draw the indifference curve through the consumption bundle 10A, 10G, which will lie here where Mary is able to consume 10 avocados and 10 grapefruits. Now note that at this consumption bundle she is having equal amount of avocados and grapefruits. But in the previous parts, which are A and B, we were given certain information about the slope of the indifference curve. Here we are given that whenever she has more grapefruits than avocados, the slope is equal to -2. The first thing to note here is that you have the constant slope, which means this is the case of perfect substitutes, and if that is the case, your indifference curve would look like the straight lines having a constant slope. So here your indifference curve would be straight lines, where IC represents your indifference curve. Now so this satisfies the condition that she is able to have more grapefruits than avocados, because in that case your slope is -2. Now note that your indifference curve would be a straight line which passes through a point and you know the slope of that indifference curve. So using the point slope form of a straight line, you would be able to calculate the equation of your straight line, which would be nothing but your indifference curve. And this is the equation for your point slope form of your straight line, where your line passes through the point x1 comma y1 and you have the slope as m, and with these two known components you can use this equation to get the equation of the line. Let's do that. Here our indifference curve passes through the point 10 comma 10. So here your x1 comma y1 would be 10 comma 10. So you have x1 comma y1 as 10 comma 10, which means your x1 is 10 and your y1 is 10. Also it is given to us that the slope is minus 2, which means your m is equal to minus 2. Now all you have to do is just substitute these values into this equation, which would give you the equation as y minus y1, which is 10, is equal to m, which is minus 2, multiplied by x minus x1, which is again 10. And solving this, which is nothing but your basic maths, so you would be able to get your equation as 2x plus y is equal to 30. Now let's plot this equation on this graph, which would look like this. And this is the equation when your grapefruit is greater than avocados. So let's first collect all the information we have and then we will draw it on the graph at once. Now next we are given in the part B that when she has fewer grapefruits than avocado, then the slope is minus half. That implies when you have grapefruits less than avocados, then your slope is minus half. In that case, everything remains the same. Again, your goods are perfect substitutes as your indifference curve has constant slope. Thus, your indifference curve would again be a straight line, but here they would have a slope of minus half. So let's again calculate the equation of the line. Everything remains the same, just your slope has changed, which is equal to minus half. So let's put the value into this equation, which implies and x1 and y1 remains the same as this segment of the line also passes through this consumption bundle. So x1 is again 10 and y1 is again 10. So that would be y minus 10 is equal to minus half multiplied by x minus 10, which would give you the equation as 2y plus x is equal to 30. And this is the equation when you have the slope of minus half, which is the scenario when your grapefruits are less than avocados. So let's draw the indifference curve with all this information at hand. So firstly, let's draw this line, which is 2y plus x is equal to 30, which would look like this. This line has a slope of minus half, but indifference curve has this equation only when your grapefruits are less than avocados. Now note that this line is divided into two segments by this point 10 comma 10, as at this point Mary is able to have equal amounts of avocados and grapefruits. So let's figure out which section of the line belongs to the region where grapefruits are less than avocados. Consider this point. Here avocados would be approximately 4 and your grapefruits are approximately 12, which implies your grapefruits are greater than avocados. Hence, this section of the line will not belong to your indifference curve. Let's verify for the other section of the line. Consider a point here. This would be somewhat of the form 20, 5, where she is having 20 avocados and 5 grapefruits. Here, your grapefruits are less than avocados. Thus, this segment of the line corresponds to the condition that your grapefruits are less than avocados. Hence, this will be a part of your indifference curve. And since this is not the part of your indifference curve, this line turns to be a dashed line. So, the final segment of the indifference curve, which corresponds to the condition where grapefruits are less than avocados, having the slope of minus half, is this blue line. Now, let's do the same exercise with this equation of the line, where Mary is able to have more grapefruits than avocados, having the slope of minus 2. Let's first draw this line having the equation 2x plus y is equal to 30, which would look like this. Now note that again this line is divided into two segments. Now note that indifference curve for Mary will consist of that segment of the line where she is able to have more grapefruits than avocados. So let's figure out which section is part of your indifference curve and which is not. Note that this line is again divided into two parts by the consumption point 10, 10, where she is again having equal amounts of avocados and grapefruits. So let's see which section of the line will satisfy the condition more grapefruits than avocados. Let's consider a point here. Here she is having approximately 3 avocados and 26 grapefruits. Thus, this satisfies the equation as she is having more grapefruits than avocados. So this part of the line would be a part of your indifference curve. Now what about this segment of the line? Let's consider this point where she is having approximately 14 avocados and 0 grapefruits. Here your avocados are more than grapefruit. It does not satisfy this condition. Hence this segment of the line would not be a part of your indifference curve. Thus this turns out to be a dashed line. So your final indifference curve would look like this, which is a composition of two straight lines having the vertex at 10, 10. And these two straight lines have different slope based on the conditions given in the question. Hence, this is the indifference curve for Mary through the point 10, 10 where she is having 10 avocados and 10 grapefruits. Now, the question further asks us to draw the indifference curve through the consumption bundle 20A, 20G. That means 20 avocados and 20 grapefruits, which is the point lying here. Now note that the conditions remains the same. That means whenever she is having more grapefruit than avocado, her slope would be -2, and when she is having less grapefruit than avocado, then the slope would be -half. Thus there is no need to do again and again calculate the equation of the line. All we can do is just draw the parallel lines to these two lines passing through the point 20, 20, which would look like this. If I first draw the line having the slope, so if I first draw the line where Mary is consuming less grapefruits than avocados having the slope of -half, and this line also has a slope of -half, these two lines will be parallel. It's just that the new indifference curve would be passing through the consumption bundle 20, 20. So all you have to do is just draw the parallel lines. Now let's draw the parallel line where she is having more grapefruits than avocados, which would look like this, where this red indifference curve is your final indifference curve, which is passing through the consumption bundle 20 avocados and 20 grapefruits, having the kink at the consumption bundle 20, 20.